Hi everyone! Welcome back to another video and day 6 of Cozy Miss. In today's video, I'm super excited because I will be setting up my reading journal for 2025 and the new year. My bullet journal is from Notebook Therapy. It's the Moonflower edition in the A5 size, and as always, it will be linked down below. Here are the rest of the supplies that I'm using. I'm using just some basic brown craft paper, this really pretty scrapbook paper that I found at my local craft store, as well as these different washi tapes. Before I actually start with the setup, I am actually going to be cutting out some different pieces of craft paper that I plan to use for all of my titles. I was trying to think about what lettering style I wanted to do for my spreads in this setup, and I really wanted to do something kind of simple and classy and easy and consistent, so I am basically just using a paper cutter to cut out lots of different squares with my craft paper, and these are what I'm going to be using for all my titles, along with my favorite gold gel pen. Let's go ahead and get started with my cover page. I feel like in my reading journal, I don't typically tend to use cover pages very often when it comes to my monthly setups, but because this reading journal, I'm basically starting my 2025 spreads right in the middle of the journal, I really wanted something to kind of act a little bit as a divider. I also think cover pages are just really fun to make. My theme for my 2025 spreads is, I don't even know how to describe it, kind of just like a vintagey, simple, light colors, pink, florals, that sort of thing. I wanted it to feel very light and dainty and pretty simple as well, since a lot of these spreads will hopefully end up looking quite full as we get towards the end of the year. For my cover page, I am just ripping up some of the pretty cream-colored scrapbook paper to add to the corners, and that's what I ended up doing for a lot of different spreads. Originally, I had used some of the craft paper squares to create my New Year title, but I ended up just really not liking it, so I do end up switching that out a little bit later. As for the rest of the cover page, I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do with the extra space, so I actually ended up adding a quote about books that I found online that I really like and I thought would be kind of cute to add to my New Year spreads. The craft paper and scrapbook paper that I used I feel like are pretty neutral and a little bit plain, so I think what really kind of ties this theme together and gives it a bit of color is definitely the washi tape. I used this kind of like florally rose washi tape that I honestly have no idea where it's from. I've just had it in my collection for a little while. And then the thinner pink washi tape with the butterflies is from Journalsay. After changing the heading, I'm basically just going and adding some stars and glitter doodles to the rest of the space, which is my favorite way to fill in extra space in any spread. Now that I finished with my cover page, we're moving on to, actually I don't even know what you would call this spread, I guess my reading goal page. It's basically just a numerical way to keep track of all of the books that I read this year, like how many books I read. And I think a lot of people tend to structure this around the Goodreads challenge. At the beginning of 2024, I set my Goodreads challenge to 90 books, and I think somewhere around halfway through the year, I ended up switching it down to 50. For me personally, I just think I have a lot more fun with reading in general when there's not that kind of unnecessary numeric pressure of trying to hit a certain amount of books each month or each year. So going into 2025, I want to just set a very simple goal, that way I can really just enjoy every book that I'm reading in the moment. I think I ended up creating maybe 54 boxes. I'll probably end up setting my Goodreads goal to 52 just because that's a nice even number for all the weeks in the year. The other function of this spread is to kind of see how I read certain books, so I will be coloring in each box coordinating it to how I read a book, whether that's physical, audiobook, or on my Kindle. So for the next 2 pages, I will be creating my master reading log. This is a spread that I implemented, I want to say around halfway through 2024, and I just find it very helpful. I think a lot of my other spreads are very fun to fill out and to create, but not always the most informative, I guess. And so this is kind of just a nice overview at the beginning of the journal to see all the books that I read this year. All the different columns are for the book that I read, the author, the genre, the date that I finish it, and my rating. I have no idea how much reading I'm going to get done in 2025, so I went ahead and gave myself some extra space just in case. We'll see if I need it, we'll see if I need more, who knows. It's kind of hard to plan ahead for these sorts of things. I like having this at the beginning of my journal though. I think it's just a nice way to just keep track of all the books that I read and kind of see them all together. There wasn't a whole lot of extra space on this spread, but I basically just added more of the little tiles for my header, and I ended up doing kind of like a cursive font with my gold gel pen. I used a little bit of scrapbook paper, and then of course filled in the rest of the space with some star doodles. Moving on to my next spread, my favorite spread in all of my reading journal. It's just so much fun to make, to look at, to fill out. I just love this spread so much. This is essentially just my bookshelf, books read log type of page, if that makes sense, where I can basically just fill in all of the books that I read in the year. I made this spread for the first time in 2024. This past year, it was 100% inspired by Mandy Journals on Instagram, who is so talented and lovely. I would definitely recommend her page. I think she is the first one who did these kind of like very magical, starry bookshelf spreads, and it's just such a fun spread to make and fill out. A little bit of a different way to see all the books that I've read this year, a bit more of a visual way, I would say, compared to the list format. Basically what I'm doing is I'm just drawing out some bookshelves with, I think I probably did, I want to say like 90 to 100 book spaces, which is again just an estimate because I have no idea how many books I'm going to read next year. And then to make the spread pretty, I added a starry window and drew lots of other magical little doodles just to make the shelves a little bit more fun looking. The purpose of this page is just to see, like I said, all the books that I read, so every time I finish a book, I'll color in one of the book spaces and write the title. The other function of this is that I can also see how many books I'm reading within each month. So the color of each book that I color in is directly correlating to the month. I have a little key in the corner where I'll basically go through and pick a different color out for each month. I feel like I did not explain that very well, so if you want to see how this looks pretty much all filled out, make sure to go watch my 2024 reading journal flip through that I just posted. I think that's also just a good way to see a little bit of a before and after of lots of these spreads because a lot of them look pretty empty right now and they do fill up throughout the year, so if you want to see kind of how these might look in a year from today, then go check out that video. next page we have is one that I'm actually really excited about because I think that this is going to just work really well for me this year. This spread is all for my physical TBR. Last year I did a bit of a Dutch door kind of list situation, and I wanted to do something a little bit different this year because I just didn't enjoy that spread. I didn't like keeping up with it, I didn't like looking at it. I also wanted a way to see and differentiate all the books that I have on my physical TBR now, kind of going into 2025 versus all the books that are added. So how I'm formatting the spread is on one side I'm doing some bookshelves, and those books will be for all the books that I own now going into 2025. I'm going to fill this out a little bit more completely when the year actually starts so I can see kind of a moment frozen in time, all the books that I have on my physical TBR. On the right hand side I did another little Dutch door, and that's going to be the list version. So I'm basically just going to list out all the books that I own now, and then throughout the year as I inevitably buy books I will add them to the list, and every time I read one of those books I can highlight it. If it happens to be one of the books that I had from the new year, I can color in the little bookshelf space. I definitely have way more books on my physical TBR than I want to, so this is a very helpful spread for me. Just a reminder to read the books that I have. I did kind of have to estimate and guess about all the books that I probably won't read by the end of 2024, so I kind of just put so far on this spread the books that I'm 99% sure that I won't get to in December. Probably my main reading goal for 2025 is to cut down on my physical TBR, just because, I don't know, I feel a little bit of stress sometimes when I have too many books and I haven't read them. I feel like I'm like disrespecting the books or something, so that definitely is a goal of mine to not buy a lot of books and read the books that I have, because I do have some amazing books. I'm very thankful for them and I want to appreciate them and read them. I originally set this page up thinking that I would color in all the books and highlight the list based off of my star rating, but I think I might actually go back and change that. I'm thinking it would be a little bit more helpful to color it based off of the month that I read it, so I think I'm actually going to go back and change that and add a different key. I think it would just be fun to see like when I read certain books in regards to like when I got them. The next spread that I'm working on is my series tracker page. Now that I have finished this setup, I do actually regret not making this another one of my Dutch door pages, because even just with the current amount of series that I'm in the middle of, I'm already kind of running out of space, but that's okay. I'll probably have to create another one throughout the year anyway. This is just a way for me to keep track of all the series that I'm currently in the middle of, some new releases and sequels that are coming out, and basically just track my progress with the series. I feel like I'm definitely more the type of person who likes to read series fairly consecutively, just because I think I enjoy series more when I'm just more kind of deeply immersed in the world. there definitely are some series I'm wanting to catch up with, and definitely also some new series that I'm hoping to start in 2025. So this spread is kind of just a way for me to keep track of that. I am going in and just writing the name of the series, and then underneath that I'm kind of doing a couple different boxes for all of the books in the series. So if it's a trilogy, I'll draw out 3 boxes, and then next to the boxes I'm just writing the name of each individual book. This is a little bit more detailed than how I did it this past year, because I'm actually writing out the title of each book in the series, which is really helpful for me. I feel like I am always getting confused when looking at series and kind of trying to figure out which one goes when, which is the next book that I need to read, so this is just very helpful for me. The next spread is another Dutch store, and this will be my new releases page. You'll notice that I'm doing lots of Dutch doors in this setup, and that's just because it's so much easier than making spreads multiple times. For a lot of these beginning of the year spreads, I just need a lot of room, so this is just a nice way for me to make spreads and not have to write out the title multiple times. I also think it's kind of fun, adds a little bit of dimension to my spreads. For this page, I am keeping track of all my new releases, and I'm doing this a little bit differently as well than how I did it in 2024. Basically, what I'm doing is I am giving myself different sections to write out all the books that I'm excited for in 2025, and the idea is that every time I read one of those books, I can put a picture of the cover on top of the corresponding section. I wanted to do this in a way that would just kind of encourage me to actually read some new releases instead of just kind of writing out a list of them, if that makes sense. I'm also always looking for any excuse to add book covers to my spreads. I just think it makes my pages look so much more colorful and fun, and I imagine this will be so satisfying to fill in throughout the year. have a little list so far of the new releases that I'm looking forward to in 2025, but I feel like there are definitely a lot that I'm missing, so this will also be a fun spread to add to throughout the year. I also really like that this page is right next to my series tracker because a lot of the series that I'm currently in the middle of are series where the sequels are actually coming out in 2025, so it's nice to be able to kind of flip back and forth and see when those sequels are actually coming out. The next spread is another Dutch door, and this is my books bought page. This spread is kind of hard to explain now because it looks very empty. Again, you should go check out my flip through if you want to see how hopefully this is going to fill out throughout the year. Actually, not hopefully, because I don't want to buy a lot of books in 2025. Basically, the idea with this one is every time I buy a book, I'm going to print out a little cover of the book and add a bit of like a collage situation onto these Dutch doors. I'm also going to draw out a little checkbox under each book so that every time I read it, I can check it off. This is different than my physical TBR page because it's not including the books that I already have going into the new year. It's a very humbling spread for me and one that I do enjoy filling out and looking at as well, and definitely also motivates me to read the books that I'm buying. Okay, the last two spreads that I'm creating are my favorites of the year, basically. So first we just have my 5-star Hall of Fame, I guess. I'm actually switching this to more of like a 4.5 and above spread, if that makes sense, just because I feel like I've just been having so much trouble rating books recently. It's sometimes hard for me to differentiate between a really high 4-star and a 5-star, so this will just be a spread for me to basically just keep track of all the books that I loved in 2025. And then the spread after that will be my favorite book by month, a little bit different. At the end of each month, I will basically go back and pick out my favorite book that I read that month and add it to this page. This was one of my favorite spreads that I did in 2024. I just think it's so fun, and I love looking at it because it includes so many books that I love. I'm going to do a flip through to kind of talk you through all these spreads one last time, but that is it for the plan with me portion of my 2025 reading journal setup. So it is a new day, new lighting. Let's do a final flip through of all of my 2025 reading journal spreads. So like I talked about, I went for a kind of vintagey, floral, pinkish flower kind of theme, I guess. I don't really know. I just wanted it to be very light and kind of dainty looking. We have my cover page just with a quote for the year. Kept this page pretty simple, isn't anything crazy, but I think it serves its purpose. Then we have my reading goal page, which only goes up to 54, but I think it'll be fun to see how this fills out throughout the year, especially with all the specific colors that I have. Then we have my reading log page, and I did give myself 2 pages for this. This is just a very neat and kind of data-centric way, I guess, for me to keep track of all the books that I read this year, the book, the author, the genre, the date that I finish it, and my star rating. Then we have my new bookshelf spread for 2025, my favorite spread to make, to fill out, to look at. I am really happy with how this turned out. Obviously it's going to look, and this applies to so many of the spreads, but it's going to look so much better when it's actually filled out at least a little bit. I tried to go for a very kind of pastel color palette, and I love all the extra little doodles and whatnot. I think it turned out so cute. Then we have my physical TBR page. This is another one of my favorites just because I think functionality-wise it's going to work really well for me. I like that I can kind of both see a bit of a moment in time, all the books on my physical TBR going into the new year, but then I also have room to add things and just, I don't know, keep track of all the books that I own. That's something that's really important for me to keep track of in my reading journal. And I just think that it turned out really well. I gave myself a Dutch door. I did a lot of Dutch doors in this setup if you can't tell, but it's just a very easy way to not have to decorate spreads twice or make spreads 2 separate times. Now we have my series tracker. I have added to this since making it, and I feel like there are still probably some series that I'm missing, but from what I know, these are all the series that I am currently in the middle of. We have the Mortal Instruments series, and I have read 3 out of the 6 books. Assistant to the Villain, I'm all caught up, but the 3rd and final book comes out in 2025. A Skullman series, I am 1 book in, and I think I am going to continue this. And then all 3 of these series I am also all caught up with, but the sequels come out in 2025. Actually, for these 3 specifically, they come out in very early 2025. The Crimson Moth series, the Fairfolk series, and of course, my favorite, Emily Wilde. I'm so excited for the 3rd one to come out. Six of Crows is the only series I put on here that I haven't actually started yet, but hopefully we'll be starting it in December and carrying that into the new year. I feel like that should be a very fun way to start the year. And then the rest of these series, kind of same situation. I'm all caught up with them, but sequels and whatnot are coming out next year, and so I just wanted to put them on here anyway. So the Legendborn Cycle, I love this series so much. I'm very excited for Oathbound to come out. A Study in Drowning, The Wicked Games, Love's Academic, and the Belladonna series, which is actually a trilogy and I have completed it, but there's a little novella coming out, and so I decided to put it on here anyway. There's a little bit of room for maybe like 2 more series. I will definitely be having to make a second one. I probably should have done another Dutch door for this spread, but it's okay. Then my new releases page. I really like that this is actually right next to the series tracker because I can go back and forth. So far, these are all of the new releases that I have written down, but obviously we have a lot of room to work with. A Crown So Silver, which is the sequel to A Feather So Black, Emily Wilde number 3, Rebel Witch, which is the sequel to The Crimson Moth, Oathbound, the 3rd and final book in the Legendborn cycle. Actually, I don't know if it's the final book, we'll see. A Witch's Magical Guide to Innkeeping by Sangu Mandana, who also wrote The Very Secret Society, and I read that and I loved it so much. The Night in the Moth, which is Rachel Gillig's new book, and I just love her writing and her world, so I'm very excited to see what this one is about. The Enchanted Greenhouse, I don't know if this is like a sequel or a connected standalone to The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst, which I also really loved. A Theory of Dreaming, which is a sequel to A Study in Drowning. I think this is a beautiful title. Catabasis, another one of my most anticipated releases. This is R.F. Kuang's new book. I'm so excited about it. Accomplice to the Villain, the last book in the Assistant to the Villain trilogy. Holly, the little holiday novella for the Belladonna series. Enchantra, the sequel and I think final book in the Wicked Games duology, the first one being Phantasma. And then finally, the Geographer's Map to, I think it's Map to Romance. I wrote Map to Love on here, but this is the sequel to The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love, which I had so much fun with, so I'm really excited to see what this brings, because I just love any sort of natural history type situations in books. Then we have my Bookspot page, which looks completely empty until next year and I actually start buying books, but hopefully it will fill out in a similar fashion to how it did this past year, and I also gave myself 2 pages for this one. Another very empty page, my 5-star Hall of Fame. And then finally we have my favorite books by month, and this will just be a way for me to see my favorite books for every single month of 2025. I loved filling this one out this past year, so looking forward to seeing how this looks. But that is everything. I will do one more kind of silent flip through for you all. Alright everybody, that is pretty much it for this video and for my reading journal setup for 2025. I'm so happy with how it turned out. I had so much fun creating all of these spreads, and I can't wait to see how they start looking in 2025. I have a good feeling about next year, just in general, but also for reading, and I don't know, there are so many books I'm so excited to get to. So let me know what you're excited to get to reading-wise in 2025. If you have set up your reading journal yet, I would love to know. And that is basically it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.